back. We back because I have not done color in the conversation in a couple months. That was intentional. We got a lot of stuff going around PSI, so I'm happy to be back. And I'm thankful for this wonderful panel that we have today. We're going to be talking about it being a family affair, how we uh, deal with and work as a family, how our families work together in this area. And so I am delighted because I have some wonderful guests, some of whom I was fortunate enough to meet in person at the PSI conference in Washington, D.C. last month for the first time. And then we got Shanita. Shanita, you just come on and co-host with me. She's been on here so many times. She's gonna be my co-host. And so thank you all for tuning in to Color in the Conversation. We're going to jump into it. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves a little bit. But I will acknowledge this, right? Because I'm both excited and I do this for other people, so I'm going to do it for myself. Y'all see my little title has changed down there in the corner of the little box. And so, but part of that time off on Color in the Conversation, I received a promotion, and so now I am not only the director of the Alliance, I am the deputy CEO for PSI, for Postpartum Support International. And I want to just thank my wonderful executive director, no, she's president and CEO, Wendy Davis, for having the foresight to yeah, I'm the inaugural deputy CEO, so to start with that, but also to allow for me to serve the organization in this manner. I'm really excited, so we're gonna do some things. But all that said, that's enough about me. I want y'all to meet these wonderful folks that we have assembled. So I'm going to start actually with Miss Vanessa, and if you can just tell us name, where you live, what you do, who you work with, and who are you related to on this here live.
Yes, definitely. Hello, everyone. As you can see, my name is Vanessa Wilkinson. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I work in Bucks County as a mental clinical health counselor, therapist, uh, change maker, you name it, I do it. I'm a proud Black female of 58 years old. I'm kind of late out the box far as getting my master's. I'm working on now getting my licensure. So, I'm a little slow out the box, but nonetheless, I'm out. I love mental health, working with people and just allowing them the space that they need to heal holistically. So I come from a holistic perspective. I'm concerned about your mental health, emotional health, physical health, as well as your spiritual health. So all of those things impact each other greatly. So you can't just address one without addressing the other one. I'm a proud mother of Porsche, Marie, Holland, Atumba. She is my inspiration. She is my drive, my motivation. Not only do I love her unconditionally, but I respect her as a human being. So you know how sometimes you can love people, but you don't necessarily like them. I actually like her. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for having the ability to like my children. I like them. So I'm just glad to be here, honored to be here. Andrea, congratulations. I am so proud of you and all that you are doing in these Black paternal mental health streets. And I am glad to journey with you and come up alongside you to serve, to respect you, and give honor where honor is due. So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, Portia, thank you so much, Vanessa. First of all, can nobody say a name like a Black mama? The way she said your name, honey, she put a period after every one of those. Baby, she proud of you. Come on, Portia, tell us about yourself.
Good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Portia, also from Philly. where we are still residing at the moment. I am the CEO and lead consultant of Reclaim Black Motherhood. That is my firm dedicated to all things Black maternal health related. From conception through those early parenting years, we offer support and expertise. And so I'm excited to be in this space, being introduced to perinatal mental health and PSI back at during the conference in 2017, no, 2019. That was in Portland, Oregon, and have had a spark since then and have continued to grow and be connected since then. So I'm just truly grateful to be in this space and to be able to like really continue to fuel the fire that I have for families and for support.
Okay. Thank you, Portia. All right, Mr. Fred. Tell us who you are, where are you, and who you related to on this here panel.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Fred Crawley. Um, I am a retired police officer of 25 years. I currently am assistant director for a nonprofit, Youth Advocate Programs, and I run a program for at-risk youth, 12 to 18 here in New Jersey. Um, and so, being a part of this platform here today, I'm very honored to be amongst very intelligent women who are out here fighting the cause that is very serious and very dear to my family. I am the husband of Miss Shanita Alvarez-Crawley, who is on your screen. And this is something that she's very passionate about. And with the population that I deal with, from a man's perspective, a black man's perspective, right, I feel like that there is room to bridge a gap with our youth who are uh, having children at young ages, and even just the population of men who are unaware of what goes on during the perinatal period and how to support, and having these conversations um, with my wife in our home with our own children, and seeing the work that you all are doing firsthand, attending some conferences myself, I think is very important. I figure if I can be a voice in an avenue and a gateway to the community that I serve, as well as who you serve, I think it's a plus and it's a win all day.
Man, love it. Thank you. I love that bridging the gap. You know, and that's we'll talk about that a little bit, but I love that you brought up young people, right? Because a lot of times in these conversations about perinatal mental health, like we don't talk about that there are teenagers who are parents, mothers and fathers, right? And so I thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for being here, Fred. Okay, Miss Shanita, tell us who you are. Tell us where you at. Tell us what you do.
Hey, everybody. So, can you guys hear me well? Thumbs up. I'm
Thumbs
glitching a
up.
little bit. Okay. All right. So, I am Shanita Alvarez-Crawley, and I am a therapist in New Jersey. I service the perinatal population of pregnant and postpartum women in the rural southern parts of New Jersey. So, I'm a very strong advocate about equity and accessibility for our mothers in the southern rural regions because we always tend to get left out when it comes down to different things like programming, funding, et cetera, et cetera. I am a mother of five and a twin mother. Um, so I have been working with vulnerable women and children and families for over 20 years now and have had the luxury of working on a maternal health equity program specifically for the community for the past 3 years. So I discovered PSI because as a clinician, I felt like I needed to strengthen my skills to really make sure I'm nailing it in this point of life, right? Like I'm already a good clinician, but I want to make sure I'm touching all points. And it's kind of taken off from there. And in PSI, I found a village of sisters that were doing the same thing, a platform space and tools and resources to create pathways for women of color. So very proud of that work. I also am the Alliance chairperson for the New Jersey PSI chapter, trying to do some great things there.
Doing, trying and doing, honey. Trying and doing. Thank you with us again, Shanita. Okay, so let's jump into it. I think I'm gonna start with let's start with you, Portia. You said in 2019 you came to a PSI conference. But how did you even hear about PSI? How did you realize that you wanted to be involved in perinatal mental health work?
I'm pretty sure I organically started following PSI on social media. At the time, I was Portia the doula, so I was doing a lot of hands-on birth work and education in Philly. Hadn't started my firm yet, and I was connected to Salima McNeil of Oshun Family Center, who I have since partnered with greatly as a founding member of the Maternal Wellness Village. We curate one of the nation's largest and most robust Black Maternal Health Week events, and also funnel support for research studies as well and community-based work. And so I heard about the scholarship. I applied, and before I knew it, I was on a flight with her, Jabina Coleman, one of the co-founders, and some other folks from Philly to Portland. And that was my first time leaving my sweet baby with my mom for about 5 days so I could get in with this conference, and go to a place I'd never been before, honey. Portland was not on the list. But Mama Shapia Monroe, okay, it was not on the list. But Mama Shapia Monroe was there. She was the keynote speaker. So I made my way to the front row. It was still an intimate size, crowded event. So got to know Wendy very well, got to know all of the co-founders of the Alliance very well during that time, and to attend a meetup. And that's really where that spark really took off for me, shortly after having my first child and being really new into this work in 2019.
Okay. And so then, Mom, how did you become interested? Was it Portia that kind of pulled you in, or how did you become connected to the work?
Well, being just a lover of people and being a therapist myself and journeying along Portia's birth experience kind of brought back some things about my own birth experience as well as my mother's. And oftentimes as Black women, we just have to be strong. I know that's where I come from. You just got to be strong. Whatever you went through, you just kind of push that to the side, press it down, and you just keep moving. But Portia allowed us to be able as a family to begin to have conversations that we were holding on to some things that we never really addressed, wasn't educated and knowledgeable about how my experience connected to my mother experience, and that Portia could look forward to them happening in her experience as well. So she opened up a level of sensitivity to the perinatal mental health circle and family as it's affected colored people or people of color, and just grew that passion inside of me, because when she's passionate about something, I know it's worth being passionate about. So my first experience with PSI, of course, was through her, but up and close was in July at the conference in Washington. And when I say it touched the depths of my, just to see powerful women in a few sprinkle of men in one place, occupying space, beautiful, intelligent. It's just, it touched me in such a way. And then the work that's being done, the doors, the education, opening up minds and hearts, and just, it was powerful by nature. And when you're in that area of powerfulness, or in that area that you know that power begets power, right?
Yeah.
And you need power in order to what? Cause a change. So I just felt motivated, driven, excited, ignited, emotionally. I had to fight back the tears, and wasn't nothing going on that caused tears, but just that passionate part of me. It really, really touched me and motivated me to what? Learn more, to begin to educate and develop myself, and be able to be present for my clients that I come in contact with, who what? Experience some perinatal issues that are not being addressed in a holistic way or a complete way. So I needed to be responsible enough to be able to have enough knowledge to be able to address their needs from that perspective, the whole entire family.
Yeah, that's good. So since that conference, have you and Portia talked about ways that you can collaborate, or how do you all work in this work together? She already had you working, Mama. I already know. I
She
can't.
already had me working. I some of the events that she has done in the past. I, of course, was the therapist that had my therapeutic space to be able to expose the group. And it was so fortunate that it wasn't just mothers. It was expecting mothers, mothers who had experienced loss, those that who were already had children earthside, and fathers, and families, and grandmothers, and anybody that's connected to the woman or the person that's going through that perinatal experience. So, of course, Portia doesn't give you any choice but to be involved. So I just came on along, hoping that, eventually one day I would actually be compensated for what I do. Because children have a tendency to think, you're free. But I'm believing and trusting God that things will turn. But just her allowing me that space and valuing what it is that I bring, I just appreciate the opportunity to be what? Used and to serve.
I love it. Portia, what you want to add? She already.
First of all, for my Black and Pregnant Philly events that I do get grant funding and local funding from, my mom has received a stipend for her contribution. Stipend. We working on local grant funds, but we're getting there. Part of what we are visioning and kind of working through is what it looks like to offer a continuum of services, right? I don't plan to become a mental health provider. I can structure a group, I can write a curriculum, I can speak and facilitate, I can bring the people. And so, what does it look like to truly have a family business, a family affair coming out of birth trauma and experiences that can actually show forth generational goodness, right? We recently lost my grandmother, and that just walking around even Philly as 4 generations would knock people off their feet. And so to think that we have been a generation of birth trauma survivors, generations of preeclampsia survivors, like we can't just sit on that. Like, no, we're about to do something through that Williams clan kind of a thing. And so stay tuned. There is some things that are going to be popping off in a more formal sense from our family.
I love that. I love that. And I love it, Vanessa, that you were saying that these are things that were not talked about when you gave birth and when your mother gave birth, right? My mother says this all the time to me. Hi, Mom. I know you're gonna be watching this at some point, but she says this all the time to me about how much she appreciates PSI and she's so proud of me working here because this is not stuff that you talk about, right? And even I'm thinking about a film that our Spanish cultural program did. They screened in May, and it was a Venezuelan filmmaker who was talking to generations of women in her family about mental health and perinatal mental health and postpartum depression. And even her mother and grandmother were like, yeah, we didn't, and our husbands just kind of didn't care. They checked out. And so we just thought that this is part of what comes with being a mother and you just deal with it. Like nobody cared about our mental health. And so, to hear you say that, she's from Argentina. I'm sorry, not Venezuela. I just got corrected. She's from Argentina. It's a beautiful film. But to hear you say that, right, that's a common, I think, experience. It's just kind of like, you pick up and you move on. And so I can't even imagine Fred for fathers, right? And for some of the young men that you work with, like what drew you into one besides wanting to come to these conferences with your wife? What drew you into like wanting to have these conversations with young people about perinatal mental health?
Yeah, so just like Miss Vanessa stated, with her generation and the generation before, those conversations weren't happening, and so to this day, this current moment, for most men, that's it's foreign to them. This language is foreign to them, and the mental piece of it is still foreign to them. So with my wife working with PSI and building her bridge leading up to this point, it was always conversations within our home. And being a father of twins and our older children, not understanding myself what was going on with my wife or what could have been going on. And so just to, hear the conversation, talk about it, and learn what's going on from, a standpoint of having my own family and having my wife doing the work. And then, coming to these conferences and then seeing the wave and the abundance of intelligent of women fighting for a cause, I think was powerful for me. And I thought, for me being a police officer, I think I always was in a place of helping people, right, and mentoring people. So why not, go this route and try to bridge some of those gaps as far as the young men and the men of the population that I'm dealing with, and not just the population, but the families. There's always a disconnect with the men and the young women that I deal with their mothers and their fathers. So there's always a pathway to be had, and I think it can start with this platform.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fred. So a lot of times what I hear a lot of men, especially men of color, saying is like that those informal spaces that you all have, like it could be the barbershop, it could be like the basketball court, like those spaces that you all have provide opportunities for you to kind of just have these organic conversations. And
Sure.
we talked a little bit about this when we met at the conference. Your wife was like, "He be coming home asking me all these questions, so he can go talk in the barbershop." Like, the conference, that's what you about to do, and get some of
Yeah.
these workshops.
Yeah, so for men, we do have those settings of speaking in barbershops and on in the gym or on the basketball court. But I think for the most part, these type of conversations are not being talked about, right? For one, because again, it's foreign to most men to talk about these things because they just don't know about them. And so, although we do have, our platform to talk about, men things, um, but how often is it talked about what our wives or our partners are going through um, during childbirth, and how it can affect, the relationship in the home, not just the relationship within the home, the relationship with your children.
Yeah,
And I think it can come full circle if there's an understanding of what's going on during this mental part.
oh, yeah, I love that. Shanita, how did you first get interested in this, and then how you bring your husband along on the journey
How did I first get interested in this population? Or
in perinatal mental health? Yeah, like what was it that drew you to this area as a therapist?
well, I think, like I said, I've always worked with vulnerable women and children, right? And I have a background in child protective services. And, you get to a point where it's like, how can we prevent these things from happening, right? You're looking at detachment, you're looking at all these bonding things, you're looking at substance use. And us as women and mothers, we're like, what's wrong with her, right? So as we started to look at the trauma and different things like that, and looking at ACEs and all these things, it's like, okay, how can we intervene early? How can we wrap women who have been through all these generational traumas, all these different things, all these life stressors, and really improve outcomes from the very beginning, right? If I can meet this mother at her early pregnancy and teach her to like be okay with asking for help, to speak out, to talk about her mental health, those different things, validate that mental health is a real thing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest, we're typically seeing this buried in our Black and Brown communities. We're not allowed to talk about it. So we're seeing it manifesting in things like, um, you know, psychosomatic symptoms such as high blood pressure or anger, right? So it's like deep down inside, it's all this other stuff. So in working in that preventative phase, I felt like I no longer wanted to be reactionary. I wanted to work on prevention. and carve a space out to meet that mom from day one, right? Because when I walk, I always share this story with the Alliance of the first patient I had when I made that career shift, and she was being seen and her blood pressure was high, and she couldn't unclamp her fist for a few days. And I think this is the first story I told my husband. And I walked in and I said, "Are you okay, baby girl?" And she said, "Yeah, they think I have like postpartum depression or anxiety or something because I haven't been able to unball my fist for a couple of days. I'm waiting for the social worker." And I said, "Oh, I'm the social worker." And she said, "No way." And she bawled her eyes out. She said, "Do you believe this is the thing?" And I said, "It better be a thing because this has been my life's work. So it better be real," right? And just walking through that and discretionary things and empowering her to speak about her needs and what she wanted to do really helped her, right? To just be like, okay, this is the thing. This isn't just for weak white women, or this isn't, I'm allowed to feel this way as a woman of color and with her faith and different things like that. And there was a lot of stigma from her family to not be weak and different things. So we had to do a lot of like ways to make sure she got the proper support intervention and found her voice to tell her family what she needed and then push against those generational things.
Yeah. And so then how did you and Fred kind of start connecting on this issue?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, having twins, like I think was a game changer, right? We have older children, so you guys all know our story. And then we have twins, and they're like kind of like pandemic babies. We're older parents because our older kids are bigger. We've never envisioned having twins, and everything was just really a challenge, right? But I am a strong woman. I am the fixer, right? There's a lot of weight that I put on myself as the woman, the mother, the fixer, and having those conversations, right? So I think for my husband to kind of be like, I'm their dad, I'm your husband, because we know all moms try to do everything. We don't want to burden anyone else with our kids. We want to do this, we want to do that. And there would be times during those really challenging periods as a twin mom where he would be like, "Give me my kids, basically. Go get in your car, go drive around, go get your nails done," to be in tune. Like he could easily walk away and be like, "Okay, she got it, then let her have it," which I think a lot of men do because they don't know where to fit in. But what was so admirable with my husband is that he kept trying to fit in, right? So maybe I can't talk about anxiety at the time, but in hindsight, there was a lot of anxiety, right? A lot of fear of being an older twin mother and all these things that we know could happen. And having a safe space to talk to my partner about that and then commit my career to helping other women get through it. Because I used to always say, and I still say, thank God I was a therapist, right? Thank God I am a strong person because it didn't crush me. I had the coping skills. Think about all the women that don't have what I have because I'm privileged to have the education and background. So, yeah.
And also who don't have a partner who's gonna say, no, I'm showing up for you. Like,
yeah,
I'm the dad. I'm your husband. Like, you don't have to do this all by yourself, right?
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what to say or what to do, but I ain't going nowhere.
It was almost exactly that. Understanding my wife is a strong Black woman. I've seen this over the years countless times. But then there were times after having the twins where I know that she was defeated, but she never wanted to say no to certain things. So that's where, as a husband and as a partner, I had to take my place and say, listen, I'm here. However I need to be used in this platform and in this space, I can do it. Let me do it and let me help you, and understand that you need to make sure you stay connected with yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And when you feel strong enough to come back in, we can tap out and we can switch places. But at the end of the day, I'm their father. I am in this home. And I understand who you are. You understand who you are. But let me step in and do what I need to do so that you can be 100%, not just for yourself, but our family.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Vanessa, and Andrea, I know we're going to move on, but I also wanted to say this because I don't want to lose. I want to make this point to like our audience and everyone. How we tag team each other is some days I'll come home and I'll tell him things about work, and I'll see, young people or young dads or young males, and I'll run down this whole list of all the things they did today. And I'll say, but I feel really bad for them. And he used to say, why? And I would say, because deep down, they want to do well, they have that joy of wanting to become a parent and be the father or the mother that they had never had or that they desired, and they don't have anyone to show them, right? We have that. We can show that to our own children and others. So we kind of play off of each other where if he has children, I say children because they are babies, but if he has teens or youths or young people that he's working with or vice versa, we try to take that approach. Let's be that safe space for them to support them. And he comes across a lot of young Black males in that situation. So that's how I've been putting my husband to work in that space.
Yeah, I'm putting him to work. You ain't
amongst other things, but
you told him you ain't come to DC to go and kick it with Kamala and them over at the White House. You come to these workshops, brother. Like
that wasn't happening. Put this name tag on.
Put this name tag. His badge. So I'm wondering, Porsche, or maybe Vanessa, one of you can speak to. Fred is shown like this example of, okay, I was ready to be there and to tag in, but we know that up to 10% of men experience postpartum depression or some postpartum, like things happen with them too after, their partner gives birth. And so how do we support the non-birthing partner through what they might be able to go through, and might be watching and saying, hey, I can't tag in, like I don't have it myself.
That is so real. And I just have to shout out those that facilitated the 2-day session around dads and partners during the conference. I attended that this past July, and it was amazing. And so some of the work that I was doing was already centering those voices, because I looped my husband into my events too, and he would speak on a panel about like, oh, she was, intrusive thoughts or laying over there on the corner and around, and I was trying to hold the baby, walk her up and down the hall, but I was struggling too, or I just had to kind of swallow it because her needs were greater. The health needs, preeclampsia, cesarean, exclusive pumping, and then a new baby. So he just stuffed his. So from him sharing and us processing since then, and our babies now too, and then being in that 2-day session, it really occurred to me that creating space for those conversations is huge. And so if we have men in our lives, if we have partners in our lives that are willing to talk, that can help facilitate a conversation, helping to push them to do so, or if in a couple standpoint, coming alongside to do so, to create those spaces, to be able to say, I hear you, Dad. Like, I hear you, partner, whether somebody's actually co-parenting or whatever the case may be. This is a lot. This is this is a lot that's going on. You're valid in your needs, in your concerns, and even in the symptoms that you may display. But here are examples of others. And there have been plenty of campaigns on social media where dads are sharing. Some of them have been horribly talked about, and there's always going to be naysayers in the comments. That's social media. People are nonsense and foolish, but there are people that have shared. There are safe spaces. PSI now has a space and a group for dads and partners. Like, there is space for you to share. And so what that may look like in the practical sense is creating opportunities to talk, actually making sure we're inviting dads in. So I know I had to change some things in even my offerings. Like, I had to go back and make sure there were pictures of dads in all of my marketing materials, that there was a particular space in my Black and Pregnant Philly event to make sure that dads were welcome and could talk and have these spaces. And so for us on the provider support side, creating space for the actual parent, the actual father and themselves, talk to somebody, grab somebody that you trust. It may be your doula. It may be the person coming in doing breastfeeding support. It may be your provider if you feel like they're resourced and can get you the information that you need without demonizing you or trying to come for your manhood, right? Because we don't have time for that foolishness. So
Right.
who is it that you trust? And you can absolutely DM me. I'm in Philly, but I'm glad to chat with you, or point you in the direction of somebody, right? Fred is here. We're glad to connect you. We're glad to talk with you. And so those are some of the things that kind of rise up for me, is that the conversation is truly where it begins, to ensuring that you get the help that you need and that you can be the best support for yourself and for your family unit.
Yeah. I wish that one of the things that I really wish that we would have more conversation about in general, when we talk about becoming parents, right, is I talk a lot with clients and even some folks that I counsel at church, because y'all know I'm pastor too, about life changes, even when they are changes that are typically seen as joyous occasions, that there is some grief that is attendant to a life change, right? And so even if you're happy to welcome this little life, we're looking forward to, even if you plan the pregnancy and plan to have the baby, right? There's this now shift in your identity from you just being Andrea, from you just being Fred, from you just being Shanita. Now you're somebody's parent, right? And even if you have the older children who are 19 and 20, and now you all are welcoming new babies when you have older children already. And so even if your children are back to back, you may have been the parent of one child, but now your identity is shifted again. Now you're the parent of more than one child, right? And so it's natural and normal for you to have feel some kind of way about that, right? For you to feel some kind, like it's normal for you to feel a little bit like maybe even not know how to feel about that. Shanita, you want to chime in on that? Oh, you came off mute, so I thought you were about to say something. Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
I'm here. I can chime in about it because everything you're describing is like that life course change, right? I got these older kids, and then now I'm like knee deep in 5 twins, right? And who am I and who was I before this? And you hear us often talking about having it down pat, being good moms, being strong, like super mom. Andrew, we hold multiple hats, we got multiple jobs and stuff, but those kids will come along and sit you down and let you know that, like, you're not doing it your way, you're on my time, right? And what you used to do and what you could do, they're going to test all your superwoman strengths. So the journey is very, very, very different. And, we always talk about managing expectations too, and how we thought the pregnancy would be, what we thought it would look like. I'm sure, Porsche, you see this a lot in your work, like no C-section, no this, no that. I'm going to breastfeed till my child is 22 and a half. And things don't go out that way.
Right.
I mean,
right.
That's a goal. That's the goal.
Right. Right. And so, and making it okay that there's some, that you feel a little bit sad about things not panning out the way, or you thought being a dad was going to be this, right? You ain't think about like them staying up all night and crying, and they can't go to sleep, and now you can't go to sleep, and now your woman is crabby, and like I don't know, like nobody has space for me being crabby. I got to hold it down, like, and not knowing how to navigate that. Like it's normal to be a little bit like sad about that, right?
And don't you dare take a nap and go watch football. And I'm over here knee deep in cocoa melon and puzzle pieces and changing diapers for dads, right? Because we're looking side-eyed out of our eyes at the dad, like, you better get over here and get a diaper or get a kid. And that, is very pretentious too in marriages, because it could cause resentment at some point.
Yes.
And you see that a lot in my therapeutic setting. There's a lot of resentment because by default, mom is the default parent, right? And we love it, and we want this and we want that, but then we want our partner to jump in. And, as that resentment piles on, you start to see marital dysfunctions if you're not very mindful and cognizant of it. Those kids will come in and wreck your whole existence as a couple.
They could. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, and so I think, being a dad and being my wife's partner, understanding when to step in, right? Knowing that she may have had a long day at work, And again, those kids like staying up late at night. So a lot of times, when they're coming in, the first person they're going to is mom. So just being a dad, knowing that I have to step in and let her get her rest for the next day's work. And that's only fair because, I look at it like it's 50-50. The kids were younger and I couldn't be the person breastfeeding. I couldn't be the person, but as time progressed on, there are things that I know I could step in and do to give her that break and that rest. And I think it was important to recognize that and see when my wife was, looking for assistance. Because again, mom is by default the primary person in most kids, so just understanding that I needed to be there any way I could.
Amen. Thank you. This Vanessa, this extended out past the husband, wife, or partner, like to the family, right? Because one of the things that I don't think that I realized until recently that after I had my son is 10 now, that I probably was battling postpartum depression. But prior to that, I had 3 losses, right? So before I have 3 angel babies and my son is a rainbow baby. But one of the things my mother always says to me is like, you working for PSI, can you help us figure out like what are we supposed to do to help when people are struggling, when our children, when our loved ones are struggling? What do I say as a mom? Or what do I do? Like, how does the family help to support the person going through a perinatal mood changes?
You certainly just hit on exactly what I was thinking. I had an experience this week with one of my clients. I will not share name and try to share at least details as possible. But this particular client was not the partner, was not the father, was not the mother of a loss due to an ectopic pregnancy. It was their sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And this client was in total distress because of what her sibling experienced. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the parent or the ones that are pursuing to have a child or experiencing the birth or the gestational period or the afterbirth period or struggling to get pregnant. It's not just those people that are impacted or affected. I remember when my daughter, and I happened to be in the room with her and her doula, and they had to do an emergency C-section. Mm-hmm. Well, I was only able to hold it together because I knew I needed to be there for her. But you can only imagine all the things that were going across my mind. Mm-hmm. Are they going to kill my daughter? Is she going to survive? Is what's going to happen? I wasn't even worried about the baby at that point. It had all shifted for me. I was worried about, was my daughter going to live? Was she going to survive? Were they going to do what they needed to do? So it's not just the parents that are impacted. My anxiety was through the roof. Mm-hmm. My mother's anxiety was through the roof. We were in sheer panic for weeks after she gave birth because it's a whole process in healing after a C-section. Yeah. So it was stress. What do we do? How do we support? Do we just take the baby? Should I breastfeed the baby? Oh, wait a minute. I don't have no milk. What in the world? So it was immensely stressful for my son as well. That's his sister. He was stressed and about to lose every sense of being able to think himself. We all were greatly impacted by that personal experience for her, but had to figure out a way to put our stuff to the side and show up for her. So when we talk about our dads and opening up conversation partners, opening up conversations and a place for them, there's need to be a whole place developed just for the family.
Yeah, just for the family. Thank you for sharing that. So what did you do to cope? Like, how did you cope with that stress of
I just had to put it to the side. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, being a therapist myself, and at that time I had a therapist and I had to process there. I couldn't process with Porsche. I couldn't process with my mother. I couldn't process with anyone that was connected to that situation. It had to be outside of the family. The family system was in turmoil. The family system was overtaken by fear and doubt. The family system, I could not lean on. I had to go outside of the family.
Yeah. So you didn't bring it back into the family system, but you also didn't like disregard it.
No,
like, there's something going on here with me. I need to figure out how to.
No.
I can't even figure out what I need to do until I go and talk about this with somebody.
Exactly. And then even the fear in that moment, my daughter had a birth plan. Of course, everything was going to just like Miss Sharita said earlier, I'm going to give birth and the baby's just going to pop out. I'm not going to have any stitches. Everything's going to be beautiful. The baby's going to latch right onto the breast and begin to breastfeed. The milk is going to flow like rivers of water. Like it, you just have this ideal that everything's going to be perfect. So when things started shifting and changes, she was in sheer panic. Now, what would it look like for me to start falling out and being in panic? No, I had to once again be strong. I had to once again hold it together. I had to once again be the rock. And so being able to create those spaces where you don't have to always be the rock is important, because sometimes in those moments, you have to be. You can't fall apart.
Yeah.
But where do you go afterwards? And PSI is that place that is in the midst of not only creating spaces for people of color or black, brown, and what they're creating spaces, but there are even more spaces that need to be created.
Yeah.
So there's even room for more vision.
Amen. Yes. Amen. Thank you for that. So, Shanita, what do you say? How do families support birthing people who might be experiencing perinatal mood disorders? Oh, she might be on a little bit. You there?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm gonna say, am I here? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, my technology is acting real shady today. But I'm going to say holding space for the family, right? Encouraging mom, dad, the spaces around there. Like, we have a very large family. So in those early years of the girls coming home, just having family members stop in, whether it's, bringing food or just being supportive, right? Letting us talk, seeing how we're doing. But I also think it's very important to try to refrain from judgment, and you don't need to make it better, right? Or don't say, we have all those buzzwords. Oh, you should be happy. Oh, you're home. You should be lucky. You have a baby. It's going to be fine. I think a lot of people misunderstand like the significance of that C-section, like Vanessa said, right? Because I think a lot of people think it's just the easy way out. We know that there's a lot of conversations around that. So just kind of removing some of that judgmental, stigmatizing language and just being there, whether especially in like our families, right? It may not be something you acknowledge for your generation, but if I'm experiencing it, then allow me to do that, right? Allow me to do what I need to do and just be a support. Don't tell me how I need to think or how I should feel or what I should be grateful for. Allow me to kind of go through the emotions and the feelings that I need. And that comes from like, our siblings, our family members. Like, I have a sister, she was good about coming and stopping by and just doing bath time. Just coming in and giving the twins a bath, right? Because that saved me like XYZ amount of time. So it's like the little things to come in and just kind of support the family and do what we need to do to keep everything together as a family system and a unit.
Yeah, I think that probably innately, culturally, right? Like, we are collectivists. Our culture is collectivist, right? It is that the village assembles. Like, we have that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, right? But it also, part of that village responsibility is not just, when I think about that, I always think about the ladies on the block, the other parents on the block who would stand on the porch when my mama wasn't home and make sure that, you know, we weren't going off the block, because we weren't allowed to go off the block. We could ride our bikes, make sure we weren't getting in trouble. And then we would get in trouble with them if we did something wrong. And then we get another whipping when mama came home because you did something wrong. And so I think about that, but I also think about who, and I think Jabina Coleman, one of the Alliance co-founders, says this all the time. It's like everybody is thinking about who's going to hold the baby when the baby comes. Everybody wants to hold the baby, but part of the village responsibility is also to hold that mother, right?
Yes.
Also to hold not just the mother, but both parents. And I think that a lot of times dad gets erased in that scenario, but part of the village responsibility is to hold those parents. And I think that Black and brown cultures, for a lot of us, we are collectivists by nature. Like, we are not, that our highest aspiration is not just to be like individuals, right? It is when I come up, I'm bringing folks with me. Like we're just that, we're collectivists, right? And so for us not to abandon that in these periods of time when we are really vulnerable and really need that. I want to roll into some last words. Anything that we that you feel like, Portia, that we should touch on about this being a family affair, perinatal mental health? What should we keep in mind?
Yes, I'm loving this conversation, from the fact of those of us that are doing the work, that are on the front lines, trying to find intersections with family members. And that could be blood, but, you know, for me, that could also be my blue and white fam. I'm a Zeta. So, you know, we are down for the families and maternal health and all of that. So that could be, what am I doing to challenge, you know, the Zetas and the Sigmas to make sure that we're having conversations, right? And saying we need to have a workshop and I'm coming to speak on it. But it could also mean a friend, a neighbor, somebody else that you're connected to, challenging them to see this as a priority, right? Okay, then. And this could also look like making sure that, particularly, I always challenge birth workers. As a retired doula, I'm always challenging my fellow birth workers to make sure that your conversations are not just mom, birthing person. They have a whole village, a clique, a squad, a crew before you came into their life, and they're going to have one after you leave. You're providing a service, you get to check you out. And so how can you make sure you're incorporating their whole crew into this journey, right? And so that may look like in educating everybody. When you come in the house and Big Mama's sitting there, but also their cousin is sitting there, and also their 10-year-old child is sitting there, how are you making sure you're including everyone, right? You're not just there to isolate and pull out mom and overlook the rest of their family. So as we talk about educate, rally around each other, ask other people to join us as advocates and providers and supporters. We need more providers. People of color, come on. I know it's a rough road, but we need more people. So as we're sounding the alarm, what does it look like to truly be inclusive, to truly be intentional, to draw people in, right? And then at the same time, as we are providing those services, to not neglect or overlook the family, the named family, the blood family, the whoever family of the person that might be our client or the person that's receiving services and support from us. So it may sound like an extra or an additional ask, but it's so needed to not just make sure one person has the tools, but that their whole entire crew has the tools, because that is one, the spirit of midwifery. That's the spirit of that community. I'm coming in to make sure a whole family, a block, a neighborhood is changed, and also for generational sustainability. So that's kind of what comes up for me as a challenge for, don't just talk about it, but pull everybody in on it. And as you're providing support, don't just talk to the birther, include their whole crew.
Include the whole crew. Ms. Vanessa, what else? What else do we need to think about in terms of this being a family affair?
Definitely having more conversations within the family and allowing that space. Yeah. Oftentimes, we now are not talking like we should be. Mm-hmm. We're focused on things that are really not relevant for the family and for the life of the family. Everything seems to come against the family to divide.
Yeah.
But we, and like you said, family is extended. Church family is very essential for me. If it wasn't for my church family, I would not be sitting here right now. I'd be rolling on the floor somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So family and having conversations, learning how to communicate, learning how to talk to one another, learning the essential part of communication, listening. We have to begin to have more spaces like this where you're asking a question. You're not making assumptions. You're asking questions. And I think when we provide that space for people to just ask, be prepared to give the information that's needed in order to what? Multiply. Because that's what PSI wants to do. Multiply.
Right.
Because that's how what? It will sustain itself. I talked to the founder of PSI, and the one thing she said to me is that she wants this to continue to grow way past her years here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
She wants it to continue to grow, thrive, live. She just wants it to continue. So how else can we do that? How else can we set those spaces for growth and development within this organization, within the alliance, within everything that's connected to PSI? So why we can multiply. So that's the only way. Multiplication.
Amen. Fred, what do we need to continue doing to keep this family conversation going?
I think it just needs to be a domino effect, right? Again, the conversation needs to happen. And anyone that's willing to be a part of this alliance, which is, it's a powerful, if you see the alliance and you see it in person, and just listen to the ladies that are on the screen now, if you're really compassionate about human life, you really, and you love helping people, right? And you love being there, and you love the challenge of making, our communities better. You're going to want to be involved, and you're going to want to pass on the information in the language so that it's understood. And I think that's the key, just to keep going, to not let it get stagnant, and to touch homes, to touch families. And I think with that, in churches, as Ms. Vanessa said, because then you reach out to the community, and then your word is keeps going, and the passion for the work will continue.
Amen. All right, Miss Shanita, what should we do? How do we keep this family affair going?
Well, so it's a few things, right? I think that I always want to go back to like the dads, right? Because the dads matter. And I believe that when we incorporate fathers and we empower them from the very beginning to the role that they could play in their family and for their children, that we're setting them up for lifelong success and proper bonding. And I feel like a lot of times, I know we're shifting the language and we're making a cultural shift to start saying, like Porsche said, include everyone there. But I think historically we focused our efforts on the mother and we left the father out, and they feel left out, and they feel like they don't know what else to do, right? Also, when we're looking at generational healing and perpetuating a different type of family structure for Black and Brown communities, we need to have strong men in place for our girls and for our young men to come up to have a blueprint on what it looks like. That's how we get to generational healing. I also think that when we're talking about healing trauma from a mental health standpoint, we need to normalize it in our communities, right? We need to create access, and we need to heal from all these generational things that have been passed on, our cognitive distortions of how things are supposed to be, and really start to aspire and dream more. So I think the family, the community, the village will create safe spaces for that, right? This community that we have, we're all together, we laugh, we joke, we are still us. But we know that our mental health matters, right? And how do we make that contagious and normalize it in our communities and wrap everybody? There's a place for everybody in the generational healing. So I think we need to keep talking about that.
Amen. And I think just to put a bow on everything that everybody has said, is that we've got to stop as people of color thinking that addressing mental health is either taboo, or there's some kind of stigma, or that this is a trend, because a lot of conversation happens on social media. There are a whole lot of TikTok therapists and TikTok, folks that know a whole lot about stuff, and so it becomes kind of a trendy topic. It can be. It's not. As Ms. Vanessa said earlier, our mental health is one of the core aspects of our holistic well-being, right? And so we've got to realize that. And that even as people who have always found other spaces and other ways to address kind of our internal doubt, those things we consider intangible aspects of our well-being, like our mental and emotional health, we can still do those things. We can still pray. We can still go to church. We can still sing. We can still, all of those things. And just as we are not one thing in any one space, I show up as Grant's mother, but I'm also a preacher. I'm also, the deputy CEO of PSI. I'm also somebody's friend. I'm also somebody's daughter. We continue to show up, and we can do more than one thing. We can do more than one thing. We can have all of those things, and none of those things should exclude us doing what we've talked about in terms of pursuing spaces and relationships that allow for us to care for our mental and emotional health as well. So thank you. Vanessa, Porsche, Fred, and Shanita, thank you all so much for coming and joining us in this conversation today. For those of you who are watching and you feel like you need some support, you can see the number for our PSI helpline scrolling. You can talk to someone in either English or Spanish for our PSI helpline. That's a warm line. So they'll connect you within 24 to 48 hours to resources in your local community. If you feel like you want to talk to somebody right now, and it can be you, it can be your spouse, your partner, it can be a loved one or a friend you're concerned about, you can call our maternal mental health hotline. The number is scrolling, but I always remember it as 833 TLC Mama. And that's 24 hours a day, over 60 languages spoken on our maternal mental health hotline. And then if you're in crisis, and we mean that you feel like you need to take a drastic measure to do something to end the pain that you're in right now, we don't want that. There is help available for you. And we're not even going to make you dial 7 numbers. 988. That's all you need to dial. And there's somebody there 24/7 who can talk with you and connect you with some resources. All right. Thank you so much. I really want to play some Mary J. Blige, the family. Let's get it, crunk up on it. In this, that family affair song, Mary J. Blige, to close us out. But I ain't got that. I sang it, Mary. Don't be trying to come at me with no license and nothing, because we ain't got no license to play that song. Shanita,
yeah, I just wanted to highlight that this is a room full of Zetas today. And I wanted to shout out my soror. So this is the family of Flair, because our blue lives matter, our she matters, you know what I mean? So Zetas in the house.
Go back on mute with that.
No problem.
Because they know I'm an AKA. That's why they did that. Go back on mute with that. I'm just kidding. We love y'all. It's D9 love up in here. All right. Thank you all so much. And thank everybody for tuning in. And we will see you again next month. Bye-bye.